first-time cruiser, welcome. We leave in February. Is it rude to ask them for a possible free upgrade? If not, how do we ask? Thanks for any help. You can ask. I would say that's probably the least likely way to actually get an upgrade. There's nothing wrong with asking, and certainly not rude. No, unless you said, hey, yo, where's my upgrade? Like, you're from the Bronx, and that's how you talk. But truly, if you want to get an upgrade, there's two more reliable ways, and it involves you paying for them. One would be you go through the Royal Up program, which is a bidding option that Royal Caribbean has. They'll contact you, usually, or your travel agent, or both, and say, hey, there's an upgrade opportunity. But that doesn't actually mean there's a room that's available. More like there is a possibility. If there was a room available, how much more would you bid for it? It's kind of weird like that. The other way, of course, is call your travel agent and say, hey, how much is to upgrade me to said room? You could do that as well. In the old days, and I'm talking like even before I started cruising, yes, you could do things like it was more commonplace to go speak to guest relations or the peer coordinator at the terminal and say, hey, are there any upgrade opportunities? And you never know. I would simply say there's nothing wrong with you asking. It's not rude at all. I would say your chances are very slim that they'll say, yes, we'll upgrade you. But have weirder things happened? Absolutely. So you never know. What do you think about the environmental factor impact of Royal Caribbean cruising? I want to go, but the more research, the more bad facts I discover. The bad facts you're discovering a lot of times are twofold, right? And I'm not saying here to tell you that cruise lines and Royal Caribbean are, Boy Scouts and they do nothing wrong, but the cruise industry has cleaned up its game a lot. So a lot of the facts you're discovering, number one, are things that maybe are rooted in the past, and certainly not every line is the same. So oftentimes detractors will usually cite this one ship did that, and it makes it seem like the whole industry does it, which is not the case. Number two, the detractors. There's a lot of people who like to paint the cruise industry in a negative light for whatever reason, even though they've never been on a cruise before. And, unfortunately, no industry or very few industries, if any, at this point are neutral, zero carbon, zero emission, anything like that. But the cruise industry is committed, especially Royal Caribbean, to making their industry as safe as possible, as clean as possible with their various environmental programs that are out there, right? Yes, their ships burn diesel. And yes, their ships generate waste. But they don't just dump their waste anywhere they want. They follow maritime regulations. There's very strict rules about it. And they do their best to absolutely adhere to those rules. And they work with environmental groups like the World Wildlife Fund to ensure that what they're doing, their operations are supporting things. At the end of the day, the ocean is where they make their money. It does them absolutely no good to have the oceans in a poor state of condition. That would detract from their business. So it's literally in their best interest to make that happen. Again, just like the airlines, you have airplanes and they take off and there's jet fuel behind them and you've got exhaust coming out of there, just like cars, it's not 100% clean, but the industry is committed to moving that way. In fact, Royal Caribbean recently announced an initiative. I think it's I don't remember if it's 2030 or 2050, but to be carbon neutral by that point. I forget exactly the date. Excuse me. I don't remember the one, but I would just simply say the old adage, don't believe everything you read on the internet. There is some truth to it. Certainly the industry is not, they don't have a perfect record. I'm not here to say that, everything you read is incorrect. It's not true at all. But I think a lot of cases, things have either been skewed, bent, or otherwise misconstrued as to the reality of going on a cruise today and its environmental impact there. They're very cognizant of these things. And I absolutely believe that they are acting not only in their own best interest as a company, but also they're looking at this as, this is our world we live in. We want to make sure we're taking care of that. So, yeah. With all that's going with canceled sailings and canceled flights, seems risky, even if you book refundable fares. The canceled cruises are very few and far between, Terry. Come on. We're talking about 3 ships because the fourth one wasn't even in service. I'm not even counting Spectrum of the Seas. They had 1 sailing canceled, and that was because of somebody on board the ship was a close contact. They weren't actually positive. Anyway, I don't think that's necessarily true, but the canceled flights, you're right. But Terry, what's my advice? I always tell you, you've been around long enough to hear this. Come in, fly in at least 1 day ahead of time. If you're truly worried about it, fly in 2 days ahead of time. If you're in a major market, if you're flying from New York, Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Miami, somewhere where that has a lot of flights per day, it's less of an issue because you get one flight canceled. There's probably another flight later in the day. If you're flying from Des Moines, yeah, that's a different issue. But come in 2 days ahead of time. But again, even a day ahead of time, you're probably going to be able to get there. The airlines are having issues. I think let me put it this way. I was able to fly home from LA to Orlando. We were delayed, but that was unrelated to COVID. It was just incompetency on somebody's part in the airport. But I digress. The flights are happening. Just remember, the media always makes it look 10 times. They look for the worst scenario, the worst case possible, and they focus on that and ignore everything else that happened, right? Just keep that in mind. But you're right. It is much easier if you can drive to your cruise port. You are not wrong on that. But don't look at it as, oh gosh, I live in Tennessee, I live in New Jersey. There's no way I'm able to get to my cruise. Far from that. I think it's still very practical. Just plan accordingly. What's the biggest difference between Mariner and Navigator post amplification? Thank you for your generosity, Jeff. The differences are very minute. We do have, by the way, a full tour of both ships on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. It truly is. It's the biggest differences is that Navigator has hooked, Mariner has Izumi Hibachi. They're like both restaurants are in the same location on their ship. The Navigator, their ice show has a drone component to it, whereas Mariner does not. Navigator has the lime and coconut, so their pool deck looks different than Mariner. Mariner has the traditional Royal Caribbean pool deck, and Navigator has a resort style pool deck. That's the biggest differences. I hear a lot about WoW bands. We're booked on Oasis. Do they still have these bands, and are they worth it? They have not brought back the WoW bands since the pandemic, since the cruises restarted, Jim. So I love them, but they were not available when I was on Harmony of the Seas. And as far as I know, they're not available on Oasis either. WoW bands, by the way, are silicone bracelets you wear. They're kind of like magic bands at Walt Disney World, and it works in conjunction with your SeaPass card. It's an optional thing you could do. Have you used the Next Cruise? And if so, what's the best benefits? Yes, I have. Next Cruise is the office on board the ship in which you can rebook another cruise, or book another cruise, I should say. There are two primary benefits to booking a cruise on board a Royal Caribbean cruise ship at the Next Cruise office. Number one, reduced deposit. Number two, extra onboard credit. The price of the cruise, Quentin, is exactly the same if you're sitting at home now booking the cruise versus at Next Cruise. The difference is they'll give you extra onboard credit for booking it. So hope that makes sense. What's the entertainment for Wonder in the showroom and Aqua Theater? Got no. Actually, wait a minute. We do know one. We know two of the shows, Mr. 12th Man Proud. But beyond that, Royal Caribbean has not announced anything, by the way. The reason we know about these two shows is because Royal Caribbean's head of entertainment, Nick Weir, leaked it. So it's official, but it's not official. Anyway, two shows are going. One is going to be Intense, which is the Aqua Theater show, INTENSE, which has an all-female cast, and 365, the Seasons on Ice, will be the ice show. Beyond that, we have no idea what the entertainment will be on there. Is not having a smartphone a problem? No, I would argue you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, especially during check-in, but it's not a problem. Like, to me, a problem means like, they're going to be like, Richard, you can't come on sir, come step over here. You've got a problem. I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that it's really useful. Sorry about the notifications, guys. I would say it's really useful for you to have it just for check-in, and put the phone away while you're on board the ship. That's totally fine. So don't feel like you have to have your phone with you all the time on board the ship. I certainly do, because this might come as a shock to you. I know, a bit of a geek. I know, behind this Brad Pitt veneer, it's like total nerd city in here. I know. Some people are like, what? This guy, the definition of cool? I know, it's shocking, but I gotta be honest with you guys. My son gave me a Royal Caribbean gift certificate for Christmas. Do you know what I'm permitted to use it for in the rules? Unfortunately, I hate to say it, that gift certificate, the redemption rules are annoying. I would look them up. You have to book it within a certain timeline before you're sailing to apply it. They're a real pain in the butt. I would have told you, if your son to come to you, I said, just give your dear old dad a check or hard cash. Anyway, read the redemption rules. I can't give them to you, but it's not like a gift card, like if you get like an Amex gift card or a gift card to the Gap, where you can just, here it is, I can just apply it. Like, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of weird redemption rules to it. So, Dave, what you want to do is say thank you to your son anyway, but then look up the redemption rules and make sure you're very clear on when you can use it. Because I remember somebody actually gave me their certificate because they were like, I can't use it because it's going to expire. Like, the rules are so restrictive. That's why I actually don't recommend the Royal Caribbean gift certificates that are out there. I think they're just annoyingly difficult for no reason. I've heard two different ways of what happens if you test positive on board. Either they confine you to your suite or they move you to the second deck. Which is it? Number two. We actually had Good Life. We have a great insight into what happens if you test positive. Brandon, who's a YouTuber on here, he's the Weekend Cruiser, and he does a great job. Don't forget, remember, guys, at worst, the worst ship that's had the most COVID cases was 2% of the entire ship, including crew members. So it's not just guests, but there were 98% of the people on board did not get COVID. I know there's a lot of negative media attention right now with COVID and cases on board. Okay. Remember, anywhere between 98 and 99% of the passengers and crew combined are not catching COVID. So just keep that in mind. And when you look at it that way, rather than trying to focus on the few cases that are on there, that's all I'm going to say. But yeah, thank you everybody for checking us out here on YouTube. Again, more Royal Caribbean information waiting for you at RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. We got a new blog post up there today. Plenty for you to check on out over there. We'll be live again next Monday right here on YouTube. Until then, have a great rest of your week, everybody. Stay safe out there. Do something fun. And we'll talk again very soon right here on YouTube. Bye, everybody.